Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bravado Interviews a really awesome founder who launches a really awesome product. This is about episode four of this that we've done, and haven't done one this year. Even though there's been a lot of innovation that's taken place in the sales industry, we haven't found a product that we felt like was compelling enough and was unique enough and was built with the right level of care and love and precision that merited doing one of these. But I've known Rahul Vohra, the CEO of Superhuman, for a long time. Superhuman's obviously a product that is revered in the Silicon Valley for having a crazy attention to detail and a cult-like following to go alongside it from its power users. And Superhuman is announcing that they have built a product for sales, Superhuman for sales. And I was really excited to talk to Rahul about it. Thank you so much for joining me, and thanks for joining the Bravado community, Rahul. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. So maybe you can just start. Some people here may not know what Superhuman is, so maybe if you could just start with what Superhuman, the original company product is, and why you decided to build in this space, just to give some context.
Of course, Superhuman is a revolutionary AI email that we've reimagined for Teams. So it works with your existing Gmail or Outlook account. You just connect that, and then you can get through your inbox twice as fast as before, reply 12 hours sooner, and save 4 hours or more every single week.
Wow. Well, first of all, that's music to the ears of any salesperson who lives in their inbox a lot. Why did you decide to focus on email as a channel that you wanted to optimize or build around?
So Superhuman isn't my first company by any means. I sold my last company, which, by the way, was also a sales tool, Reportive, to LinkedIn. And linked as a Reportive was attempt number 6 or 7 to start companies. It does take time. And when I started Superhuman, I wanted to solve the biggest possible problem. And email is actually way bigger than most people realize. There are roughly 1 billion professionals in the world, and on average, we spend 3 hours a day reading and writing email. So that's 3 billion hours every single day, or north of 1 trillion hours every single year that go into reading and writing email. It's actually really hard to find something that people spend more time on. I did eventually find one thing that people spend more time on than email, which is sleeping. But I had no idea how to fix that, and I have a very clear vision on how to fix email. So we set out to build a revolutionary email experience. We want you to get through your inbox twice as fast as before, to reply faster to the things that matter most, to follow up on time every time, to respond with brilliant timing, and collaborate more effectively. Ultimately, the idea is to make you brilliant at what you do.
Um, as a salesperson, you spend a lot of time in email, and it's probably like, on par with you. The first two skills you learn in sales are how to cold call and how to write a good cold email. And I think, given the rise of many of these generative AI platforms, the playing field has gotten leveled in some ways of what is the quality of an email. I remember when I first started in sales in 2008. There was no mass email tool. There was no outreach. There was no sales off. Like, you literally had to, heaven forbid, one at a time write an email to somebody. And then, with the rise of things like SalesLoft and Outreach, Tout App, before that, I suppose, there was this like new wave of email where you could send, 1 to 100 or whatnot with personalization tokens. And like that worked really effectively in 2014, 15, 16. You were getting 15, 20% reply rates with very little effort. But of course, like with anything, the platform got saturated, the channel got saturated. Customers became aware that these types of tools were out there, and the response rates have been going down. And quite frankly, sales teams have been really struggling over the last couple of years with cold outbound. Across the Bravado community, we've seen that the average attainment for an SDR, the number of meetings that they can set in a month, has dropped from 11 when I started the company in 2007. In 2017, it was 11 meetings per week is what an SDR was able to generate. And it is all the way down to 2.5 now. And the
Wow.
average SDR is getting 2.5 meetings a week. And it's not for a lack of effort or not for a lack of desire, I think. And so I'm curious, as you think about Superhuman for sales, I want to know more about it. But just before we go there, what do you think about email as a channel, as a means by which companies can do business, and where things might be headed there?
Yeah, so a lot of people say that sometimes email is dying, especially as you think about go-to-market channels. But I think when people say that, what they're really saying is that outbound email or email prospecting is dying, just like you mentioned. And it's definitely changing very rapidly. Like you said, sales engagement platforms have spent the last 10 years perfecting mass distribution, and it kind of doesn't really work any longer. The net result is that outbound email is increasingly commodified, and I think it's going to be increasingly challenging to stand out. And that in turn is going to make other top of funnel tactics even more important, including trends like product-led growth and product-led sales. But Superhuman for Sales isn't about that. Superhuman for Sales is about what happens when you already have someone interested. What happens when you're actually taking through a prospect through the process of making a deal, taking them from this is interesting to here's your DocuSign. For that, email is the lingua franca of business. It's how business happens. And email itself was never actually designed for salespeople. Superhuman for Sales is the first email experience that ever was actually explicitly designed for salespeople.
uh, what you just said makes a tremendous amount of sense. I think that most salespeople will tell you that once you have that first conversation with a prospect, the vast majority of how a deal gets done, it's over email. That's the most common interface that you use. Can you tell us a little bit more about Superhuman for Sales, what exactly it is and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, the impetus was a lot of what you said, but really it isn't aimed at SDRs. It's aimed at sellers who are carrying quota. And as you know, I'm sure you know, only 72% of reps actually expect to hit their quota. And since 2022, win rates have declined 17%. Sales cycles are taking 23% longer. So in short, it's not just SDRs who are hurting. Reps today are taking longer to close fewer deals. Now, that isn't going to be a surprise to anybody. Every deal these days has more stakeholders, finance is more likely to get involved, budgets are tight, frozen, sometimes even non-existent. And a lot of technology companies are trying to solve that problem. That's why we found that reps we've spoken to are using an average of 10 tools to close a deal. But what we noticed is that all of these other technology companies are building tools which are adjacent to email. And yet sellers spend more time in email than any other tool. I would actually argue that email is the most important sales technology, but email itself was never designed for sales.
Hmm.
For example, sellers need to constantly switch out of their email into their CRM, their sales engagement platform, and multiple other tools just to move deals forward. Not only does that slow down every reply, every quote, every proposal, every contract, two-thirds of reps are actually also feeling overwhelmed by their sales apps now. And account executives have to frequently paste screenshots of emails into Slack or Microsoft Teams just to collaborate and get deals done. So that takes those long sales cycles and makes them even longer. And of course, sales managers need to regularly coach reps on email behavior, how to write them, when to send them, what to say. But that's really hard, very fiddly, and very time consuming. As you know, we spent the last 8 years building the fastest and most powerful email experience in the world. So that put us in the perfect position to answer the question, what does email look like when you design it specifically for sales? So we have three core pillars. We have collaboration, we have insights in AI, and we have running a flawless sales cycle. So if it makes sense, I'm happy to jump through each of those
Yeah.
pillars and we can talk about how they
Let's
work and what
let's
it
let's
does.
talk through it. That sounds super exciting, and I very strongly agree that the context switching between tools, pasting screenshots of emails in Slack, like the problems that you're identifying, I think are very common. Even collaborating on what the right response is to a customer can be really difficult. Like you're often doing that in Slack because there's no way for you to like edit emails in a multiplayer view the way that you can in Slack, which just creates additional barriers to entry and creates additional problems. So I very strongly resonate with the problem statement. Tell me more about how you solved it.
Okay, let's take collaboration first. With
Cool.
Superhuman for Sales, you can now share, comment, and collaborate right from your inbox. So let's take a deal example. Imagine you want to get a deal discount approved. You might then need input from your manager or your finance team or maybe RevOps. In Gmail or Outlook, you'd have to BCC emails, forward replies, and paste screenshots into Slack. And you'd have to do that constantly just to keep everybody in the loop. And even as you get approval and you tell the customer, you then have to keep going back to the CRM to update your notes and keep your manager informed. With Superhuman for Sales, you can now comment directly on an email and mention your teammates. That will actually share a live view of the email, including all past messages and all future messages. You don't need to BCC anymore. You don't need to forward anymore. You don't need to screenshot anymore. Your teammates can then review and comment directly on the email. And not only does that keep the conversation in one place, it also keeps everybody on the same page. So everything happens just so much faster. And as you progress, you can then, of course, update HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever your CRM is without leaving Superhuman. So that, in a nutshell, is the collaboration pillar.
Yeah, super interesting. I guess when you say a live view of the email with kind of a record of what's happened already, that it's pulling all of the like the thread of the email and sending that into it, or basically displaying it to the person, so you don't need to be like, here's what happened and here's what we talked about and whatnot. You save the time of doing the updates as well.
Exactly. It's the entire email. And think about when you forward an email. You're really only forwarding the particular email that you hit F on or that you clicked forward on, and whatever the quoted content happens to be. It doesn't have all the previous emails in the conversation or in the thread. It doesn't have the previous attachments in the conversation or in the thread. It doesn't have any of the context, and it doesn't forward any future emails. It is the most broken, primitive atomic sharing units you can actually imagine. And so we rethought that entire process. What if you could just click share, although of course this is Superhuman, so you hit Command S to share the conversation, and the entire thing gets shared. All past emails, all future emails on that conversation, attachments included. Now your manager or your finance team or RevOps can immediately get up to speed and just reply and say, sure, deal is approved, or you can use this pricing, or whatever it is you need to get done. And that's why we're actually seeing teams move faster with Superhuman for Sales.
That's so smart because, like as the CEO of the company, but coming from a background in sales, like anytime that you have an update on a deal, you want to see all the context and like what's going on. And sometimes you only get the like, customer said we're not going to move forward, or they decided not to, whatever. And then you're like, well, what happened? Tell me more. And like there's a lot of internal time that gets wasted in that, where if they could just like be like, add me to the, it's almost like adding me to the account. If you could just like add me to the account at the moment in which like we have a critical update, then we can collaborate on how to like objection handle or solve the problem or whatnot. It's a super smart process. And then the lack of attachments and stuff is so annoying too when you're like going through and trying to figure out what was sent. Like, hey, they rejected our latest proposal, but the proposal attachment isn't there, so I don't actually know what the pricing was. And like there's so many parts of that that's really broken. Really, really cool to imagine you being able to loop everyone in with just one share, as opposed to like doing all this work to give people context and attachments and previous email threads and stuff. So that's really awesome. On top of that, the future sharing is really cool, which is to say that like if you add me to this account on share this email with me, then whatever like we'll like collaborate on a response. We send the response, but now I'm waiting around to see if the customer ever responded or not, right? So if I'm able to stay in the loop of what's happening with the deal, it just makes life so much easier. That's super cool, man.
Exactly. Yeah, let's say you and I are working on a really important deal together, and you're my manager. I just want to keep you in the loop. If it's an important deal, you presumably also care, right? This matters to the both of us. So I just mention you on that email. It shares all the previous emails, it shares all the future emails. As the conversation evolves, that's just now in your inbox. You can find it with search. You can leave further comments. We both don't have to make trips to the CRM, constantly BCCing or going backwards and forwards. And even if you have automatic sync set up, there's always that frustrating moment if you go to the CRM, you look at the account, and just as you said, it's like customer doesn't want to proceed. And you're like, why? What's going on here? Actually being able to see it directly and for you and I to have that conversation in the same place where collaboration is actually happening. And that's really, really key. So that's collaboration. Pillar number two is you can now give your team the insights to know what to do like a top performer and the AI to do it flawlessly like a top performer. So we
Tell
have
me
a
more.
feature called, absolutely, we have a feature called Smart Send that delivers emails when they're most likely to be opened. So you can make your email appear at the top of a prospect's inbox at just the right time. Some people don't do their email until it's 11 a.m. or sort of 12 p.m. Some people actually start in the afternoon. A lot of founders, CEOs I know actually kind of ignore it on Thursday or Friday and catch up on Saturday and Sunday. But how do you, as a seller, know what your prospect is going to do? How do you know what their behavior is? That's what Smart Send solves. So when you're writing an email, you can just hit Smart Send and boom, we'll say, you know what, we're going to schedule this at 7 minutes past 10 a.m. on Saturday morning because that's when Rahul is most likely to open his email.
And how do you know when someone's most likely to open the email?
That is built off the back of 8 years of having the fastest email experience in the world and well over 1 billion emails sent.
Got it. So you basically used your own data in order to figure out what time different personas and different types of people are most likely to open emails. And then you like smart schedule it to show up at the time at which you think is the highest likelihood of being read.
Exactly, exactly. It is arguably our first data product. And so that's Smart Send, and that sits next to another feature called Recent Opens that shows a real-time feed of people opening your emails, because then you can follow up when you're top of mind. We've all
Mm.
had the experience where, we send an email and obviously we don't hear back, people are busy, or maybe it's just not quite the right time. But then suddenly, out of the blue, you get an email back from that person, and it could be a week later, it could be 2 weeks later. I've actually had it even, as you think about enterprise sales, I've had it even 3 months later or a year later when the customer's like, hey, I'm finally ready to actually do something here. Now, imagine if you could tell when people were thinking about you. But with the recent opens feed, you can. You can see when they've opened your email, even if it was one that you sent 6 months ago. It's a little feed that sits on the right-hand side of Superhuman. When you start your day, you can see who's been opening your email over the last day or so. You can now touch base with perfect timing. And this is
Mm.
an amazing way to resurrect a conversation that may have gone stale. It's also an amazing way to get people to get back in touch with you. If you reach out within a few minutes of people opening your email, or actually just within even a few hours, you are an order of magnitude more likely for that person to respond.
Totally. Do you? I've heard that like Apple has some. I don't. I'm not like an expert in this, but I've heard that there's some sort of like tracking privacy thing where they're trying to like obfuscate when people open emails. So, because back in the day, I remember that this was technology that we had had access to as salespeople, where you would get a ping when someone opened your email. But I think it doesn't work as well anymore, or something like that. Do you face this issue, or is it something that you've come across?
If anything, it actually works better than it did previously. So there's this constant jostle between folks who want to see when people open their emails. And actually, it's usually marketers, not salespeople. We think that
Mm.
salespeople send a lot of email. Boy, that's not true. Marketers send the most email in the world.
Sure.
And there's a tension between what marketers want to do and what email service providers make possible. And
Mm.
there have been moments in the past where briefly the technology has broken. So for folks who don't know, this is basically pixel tracking. You embed a invisible 1 by 1 or sometimes 0 by 0 pixel in the email. If the other person has images downloaded in the email clients, they can just the email client downloads it, and then the sender can see whether or not the email was sent. For a week, a few years ago, Gmail deliberately turned that off because they wanted to protect people in a certain way. Or
Mm.
you could argue whether or not it's actually protecting anything. And then a week
Sure.
later, they reversed stance
Ah.
because it did actually break tracking for basically anyone who ever sent any email of every kind. And so there is this very natural tension here. Over time, what we've seen is that more and more people are comfortable with this. And if they're not, there's actually plenty of technology available to not be tracked. You just turn on privacy mode. To your point, Apple has a privacy mode. Superhuman also has a privacy mode, various kinds. You can turn off all images. You can also turn off known tracking pixels. Of course, that includes Superhuman. But if you're a seller, this is a superpower to be able to know that someone is thinking of you and being able to reach out at the right time. And of course, none of us want to sell something to somebody who doesn't want it. I mean, that's the worst kind of sales. We genuinely want to make people's lives better. And if we can do that faster, then why wouldn't we?
Sure. No, I mean, I think if someone opens your email and that's a great time to call. I mean, as a salesperson, we used to try to time it where if somebody opened the email, we would try to call them within 5 minutes of when they open the email, knowing that A, they have some time right now because they're looking at my email, and B, they're thinking of me already, so I'm top of mind. And if I get them on the phone, they're gonna be like the likelihood of converting that into a meeting or getting an update on the deal or whatever it might be is just much higher. We used to do this a lot with procurement people actually, because procurement people are very hard to get on the phone. They know not to do that, and so you wait till the procurement person opens your email and then you call
Hmm.
them right away, knowing that they have some time, and it does make a big difference. There's no doubt about it. Speed to lead and timing makes a huge difference in sales, and so any advantage, any edge you can get in this market where the stats you were citing at the beginning are being felt so hard in the sales community. The average salesperson quota attainment has, you said 72% of salespeople, it was that right? It was 72% of salespeople
72% expect to hit it. Yeah.
expect to hit quota. So what's interesting about that is we track real quota attainment at Bravado for our members. And the in 2000 and Q4 of 2021, 59% of salespeople hit quota.
Hmm.
And in Q4 of 2023, that number dropped to 31%. And so
Wow.
salespeople are really struggling to hit quota. And so I think, a lot of what you're talking about here, saving time, helping you schedule emails to get them seen more often, this sort of stuff. Again, like these small 1%, 2% make a huge difference in your opportunity to actually hit your number this year and beyond. So super interesting. I know that you have an AI reply tool in the original Superhuman product. Is that also brought over to Superhuman for sales? And how do you think about that as well?
It is, yeah. That's a part of this second pillar, which is all about the insights to know what to do and the AI to do it flawlessly. So we brought over Superhuman AI, and where we find sellers most loving this is the ability to just jot down a few phrases, and Superhuman AI will turn them into a fully written email. And we actually match the voice and tone in the emails you've already sent, so the email sounds like you. So with Superhuman AI, you can now write faster than ever before. So between the recent open speed, between Smart Send and Superhuman AI, that makes up the second pillar. And I'm going to just sort of cover the basics here. There's 100 more things that Superhuman does, of course, but that makes up the second pillar and brings us neatly on to the third pillar, which is running a flawless sales cycle. Now, imagine being able to run a flawless sales cycle every single time. When you're scheduling, you can use share availability to book meetings instantly with no back and forth. When you're sending an email, we'll actually remind you if you don't hear back, so you can follow up on time every time. And then with snippets, which is our template feature, you can instantly insert phrases, common responses, the most effective outreach. You can also share all of these with your team. So
Mm.
this is just the tip of the iceberg, and Superhuman for Sales does so much more. But between collaboration, AI, and insights, and running the perfect sales cycle every single time, I think that's a pretty good overview.
Yeah, can we talk about the AI feature?
Oh
Because
yeah.
there's a big the AI writing feature specifically. Um, this is always a problem is that, like you get an email from a customer and you're like, all right, I want to write a good response to this person. And maybe they've come back and they say, hey, we just don't have a budget this year. Sorry. And you want to basically offer a discount in order to kind of get the deal done. The nuance of how to write that email, like if you looked at how a top performer would handle that, like their email is going to read, well, like poetry, and then and they're going to do it with subtlety and with finesse and whatever. And then you're going to look at an average or a low performer, and they're going to do it in this like blunt, obtuse sort of way that's going to be more of a turn off to the customer than not. How do you think about leveling the playing field for salespeople and using superhuman AI? Like, what do I need to do in order to have it help me write a good, like, offer this person a 20% discount, but don't make me look like a cheap car salesperson? Like how do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean that's obviously going to be a work in progress. AI, I think, in any product hasn't reached quite that level of top performer human nuance, but I don't think it's very far away. If you
No,
look
I
at the
don't.
rate at which AI is improving, it might be 12, 24, 36 months away at the very most. The way that you'd use superhuman AI to do that today is as a way to not have writer's block and to have something to actually start to work with, and then to start to pull in other people, probably your manager or the top performers on your team to give you some advice and take a look. It is, and you'll know this as a CEO, it is so much faster to work with a draft than to stare at a blank page or a blank email and just think, gosh, what do I say? So what you would do in Superhuman is you'd hit Command J, that's the shortcut for Superhuman AI, and you'd type in a few notes. You'd say something like, explain or make the customer feel heard, uh, convey appreciation, explain that we've already pushed to the limits of our price, but I'll do one more run around internally and see what I can do. Stand by, I'll be back shortly. In the meantime, here's some other stuff, right? And you'll say that in some note form. Hit enter, and then Superhuman AI will actually write that in your own voice and tone. And it's going to reference previous emails you've written, so it's going to match those. That's where the collaboration features get really useful, because then you can put that in a comment, you can ping your manager, or you can ping Bob or Jane down the corridor, the virtual corridor, I suppose, and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of writing. I know you closed a deal just like this last quarter. Is there anything that you can say to make this better?
Mm,
Or another way to lead into all of this is to use snippets. So we briefly just touched upon them right now as part of pillar number 3, which is just what if you could just be flawless every single time? And part of that is snippets, and snippets can be shared across the team.
mm,
So if you have somebody on your team who is a top performer, or if you are and you're like, I just have this email that slays every single time. Like, there are these deals that we sort of get our back pressed up against the wall and we don't know what to say, but I figured out this wording or this reframing of the problem that makes people get to yes. You can then actually share those templates with your team. And that's another way that you can solve the cold start problem. And in the not too distant future, we're actually going to fuse these things where superhuman AI knows about your snippets, it knows about the language that you use at your company, it knows about the products, the problems you solve, the way that you talk about them, and it will actually be able to start to take those and incorporate those in the responses that it generates for you as well.
wow, that's really powerful because that was actually one of the things I was thinking is like we have certain phrases and things that we say at Bravado all the time that are kind of like our code words or our like, whatever market messaging, and how well will Superhuman be able to pick up on like the way that we talk about something as opposed to how the market might talk about something. And that sounds like a really powerful feature.
Yeah.
Cool. So one more specific question on Superhuman for sales, and then I want to talk about the pricing and the offer for the Bravado community and whatnot. But I'm curious about your thoughts on, a lot of sales reps use um outreach or sales loft or something like that, and they work off of tools like that. There's also like front, which I know has some tools like this as well. How do you think about competitive differentiation, and how do you think about like if I'm a salesperson and I'm considering this, where does this sit in my tech stack? How should I be thinking about this versus other email tools or other tools generally that I might be using?
Yeah. So if we think about sales loft, if we think about outreach, that's really for outbound prospecting, primarily for SDRs. Of course, a lot of AEs do their own prospecting as well. But even so, you're not going to use sales loft or outreach as an email client. That would be slow and clunky, and it doesn't even work properly for that. So it's not that. It's
Mhm.
also not front. Front is really designed for multi-channel. Front is really designed for essentially customer service or support. It is primarily a ticketing system. It's really good when you have a set of people, you kind of want to round robin things, you want to make sure nothing falls through the cracks, and that's what it excels at. And in general, there's a lot of sales technology out there beyond just those 3 products that we talked about. But every time a prospect replies, or they want a demo, or they start to move through the sales cycle, where do sellers actually end up?
Yeah,
Well,
you're right.
today
In Gmail for sure.
it's in Gmail or in
Or
Office
Microsoft.
365. Exactly. And both of those are one size fits all tools, neither of which was designed for sales. whereas Superhuman for Sales was designed explicitly for sales teams. And our goal is to help reps get from stage one to closed one faster than you could possibly do in Gmail or in Outlook. And there's no other tool focused on the stage one to closed one problem like we are. And there's no other company building an entire email client specifically for sellers.
I love that. Last question for you on this before we get to the go-to-market is increasingly we do a lot more of our sales through text message and Slack. So like once we have a prospect that we have a conversation with, we'll try to move them into some sort of instant communication channel. It makes going back and forth faster and whatnot. I'm curious how you might be thinking about collaboration through that lens. Is there a world in which there's a more live communication stream that can take place between me and my customer? Because certainly for us, it's helped increase sales cycles. It's helped shorten sales cycles when we're able to just go back and forth really quickly with a customer in that way. I'm curious what your POV on that is.
Yeah, of course. I mean, most important deals have some components of text message or WhatsApp or instant messaging going on. It's such a obvious and powerful way to really lean on the human to human connection and also just cut out all the rest of it. So I think at a certain point that's something we'll consider. Slack, on the other hand, I think really shines after the sale. For example, we set up Slack channels with many of our customers to support them after things are said and done, and we're into implementation, we're into customer success, and we're into growing that account over time. I also think Slack can shine pre-sales, but for certain very specific kind of sales. I'm thinking of your largest deals, those
Mhm.
with enterprise contracts, long multi-year deal cycles. It's really a very long relationship over time. But for most sellers, for most SMB and mid-market reps who are working a large number of deals, Slack just doesn't make sense. Even text message is going to be challenging. For example, one of our customers sells mid-market technology with an ACV of 35K. Their reps run 8 demos a day. And we had this very conversation, and they simply don't have the time to spin up a new Slack channel and get everybody invited, all the stakeholders
Yeah.
there before they need to move on. And frankly, neither does the customer. You've got
Yeah,
this
sure.
brief moment where you get together for the demo, you've got emails that are flying around before that and after that. And the magic of email is that it is blazingly fast and it just works without friction.
Mhm.
That is not true for Slack. It is really powerful post sales, and that's when we use it. But that's also why email is the lingua franca of business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love that expression. Email is the lingua franca of business. That's really cool. Okay, let's talk about go to market. So one of the things you said is that outbound prospecting as a strategy and as a channel is decaying and people call it dying. I don't know that it's dying. We still book a lot of emails using cold email, but not as many as we used to, and with a lot more effort than it used to take. So I think it's harder certainly. Um, how do you think about the go-to-market of Superhuman for sales? I mean, obviously we're doing this and you're doing some commuting-led stuff. Obviously, you have a brand that is as well recognized as any in the tech community. But how do you think about bringing Superhuman to sales, go-to-market, selling to sales leaders, selling to rev ops, getting it in front of them? People are busy. There's a lot of sales tools out there. And how do you think about competing in this market?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it starts with having a clear sense of your competitive differentiation. We're not a CRM, we're not a sales engagement platform. We are an email client, which is maybe weird. I mean, very few pieces of sales technology are actually an email client. And like I said, I don't think anyone has ever built an email client just for salespeople. And
Mm,
so we can get into theory of company building. This is one of those things where the story that we have to tell is actually there is a new product that you've never bought before that you should. And the way I sometimes explain that to a seller or to a sales leader is I draw this simple diagram. I'm a fan of visuals, and it has three circles. You can have your CRM up here, you can have your SEP down here, and you can have your email over here in a little triangle. And if you think about how much you might pay per rep per month, today you're probably paying a median price of $150 per month for your CRM. You might be paying 100, 150, even $300 a month for your sales engagement platform. And if you're using Gmail or Outlook, you're paying 5, 7, $12 per month for your email client. And yet that is the tool that of these three people spend the most time in. In fact, sellers spend more time in email than they spend in any other tool. And it may seem like a great deal, but of course, you know this, I know this, we get what we pay for. And what we're getting there is a one size fits all tool that wasn't designed specifically for sales.
Mm,
And so a big part of our go-to-market is actually the positioning and the narrative. And like, we've all taken this for granted for 40 years. We have to start to make people aware that this is a thing that we've been taking for granted and that actually it doesn't have to be this way. That
mm,
now, finally, we've done the grind over the last 8 years of building the fastest email experience in the world. We've completed the platform puzzle. Superhuman now works with Gmail and Outlook on every single combination of platform on a Mac, on Windows, on web, on iPhone, and on Android. And we've had time to answer the question, what is the most powerful email experience you can imagine for a seller? So it
mm,
starts with positioning, it starts with narrative. But then Superhuman, I mean, to your point, like cold outbound is really hard. Superhuman, like so many other companies these days, grows with product-led growth, with product-led sales. In fact, I think 70% of our contracted accounts started, more than 70% started with an individual signing up for Superhuman self-service.
mm,
They then make a team, self-service. That team then hits critical mass, which for us is in the region of 10 to 15 people. An account manager reaches out, a salesperson reaches out. We then have a conversation. And we then say, hey, it looks like you're using Superhuman. Maybe you have like 3 or 4 of your sellers on it, but you obviously have more sellers. Did you know how much more powerful it could be if you actually make this a team tool? So
mm.
that's 70%
Wow.
of contracted accounts today. The other 30% looks a lot more traditional. It's, people signing up for webinars, or it is cold outbound, which we do, but it is harder for us, as it is for everybody nowadays, than that inbound strategy, which is so effective. The final piece is word of mouth due to two things, due to AI and due to enterprise.
Mm,
So it's no surprise that AI is a thing that people are looking for. We are massively investing in it. We talked about Write with AI, but that's just one of our flagship AI features. We also have auto summarize. Imagine a one-liner that automatically keeps itself up to date above every single conversation. And what we found is that people are moving faster than ever before because they don't often need to read the entire email. They can just read the one-liner. If they want more information, they hit a keyboard shortcut that expands. They can now see bullet points summarizing the email. And unlike Gmail, unlike an Outlook, that is pre-computed. It's instantly available. You don't have to, hit Gemini and wait 5 seconds for the thing to happen. We have instant reply. Imagine waking up to an inbox where every single email already had a draft reply. You would
mm,
just hit edit and then send. And sometimes you wouldn't even need to edit. And most recently, we launched Ask AI. Email is a treasure trove of information, customer correspondence, of course, deal updates. If you are a sales manager and you're hiring, candidate correspondence, so much internal stuff. And yet, for 40 years, we've had to rely on search, right? We've had to remember keywords, scan subject lines, guess the sender, just like scan through this list. And it's such a difficult way to find things. Whereas with Ask AI, you can just stop searching and start finding. You simply ask, when is the Q3 go-to-market offsite? What's the latest with deal XYZ? How
wow.
much did we close? I'm trying not to mention our customers here, which is hard. How much did we close deal ABC for? And it just finds the answers because all of that information, by the way, is in your email. So when it comes to email, we now actually lead the category for AI. US News chose us as the best AI-powered email client for 2024. And to bring this back full circle to your go-to-market question, those things matter. So if you're building
Yeah.
a company, like being the best in your category at AI actually really matters. Most of our leads actually come in because they've heard Superhuman is amazing at AI, whether you're a salesperson or not, and they want to learn more. And then that ties into the upmarket pull over the last year. We're now being pulled upmarket into the enterprise. Our largest deployments have grown from small startups to teams of several thousand. And we've gone beyond serving just the technology industry where we originally started into professional services, banking, finance, even government. And the net result of that is over the last year, we've more than doubled the rate at which we welcome new users. And that combined with everything else now creates a flywheel. So you start to get this word of mouth effect, even in large enterprises. We've sold a very well-known large strategic consulting firm recently, and a lot of those people also obviously talk to management consultants at other strategy consulting firms. And so that word of
Hmm.
mouth now starts to happen, and they reach out to us and they're like, well, we're figuring out our AI strategy. Can we run a pilot with you? And that's now a form of product-led growth, but it's happening even at mid-market, even at enterprise.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I still remember the first time I got exposed to Superhuman, 6, 7 years ago, and it's such a magical experience to have a tool that could get you to inbox zero really quickly and give you all these shortcuts and all these superpowers. And I remember you had the little like sent by Superhuman at the bottom, and it quickly grew that all of the tech community was really using it. And then I started seeing it outside the tech community. I would get email from someone in a different sector, banking, finance, whatever, and they would have this sent by Superhuman, and it started becoming more and more in vogue. And I feel like you're like at the next level of that now, where you're getting large enterprises who are coming to you for the AI products. The Ask AI thing, is that just in your own inbox, or do you have a team view of that?
That today is just in your own inbox. So we're not trying to be Glean, for example. Folks don't know Glean is this amazing tool that will sort of index your entire company's information. It's really focused on what's in your inbox, what's in your calendars, what's in your contacts. And those are the three things that we immediately have access to. But we're not going to stop there. We do also at the same time have, when people sign up, they're signing in with Google or they're signing up with Office 365. So we'll be able to pull in over time documents that you may have access to that might be relevant. You also connect your CRM, you connect HubSpot or Salesforce, and over time we'll be able to connect to those systems with Ask AI. And what we're really building towards here is a fully fledged agent, a sales AI agent, if you will, where you can ask meaningful questions. And if the information isn't in your email, it knows to go out to Salesforce or to go out to HubSpot and
Mm.
retrieve the information from there and then weave that into the thing that you're trying to do.
That's really cool. That's super powerful because it happens to all of us, as you know, and it's a hard problem to solve. And so it's always exciting to see it come to life. All right, Rahul, thank you so much for spending the time. I've got three more questions for you that are a little bit lighter and more fun.
Okay.
I really appreciate the deep dive into Superhuman for sales. But before we let you go, we got to get a couple fun ones. So maybe let's start here, which is as a founder, you're obviously involved in a lot of sales cycles and a lot of deals, and you touch it. What's your favorite part of sales, and what's the part of sales you hate the most?
Gosh. Okay. Um, this is probably true for every salesperson or any seller. My favorite part of sales is meeting and hanging out with customers. Steak dinners are happening less than they used to, or whatever it is that you eat. But like I said, we recently closed a very large enterprise deal, and just being able to go and hang out with all those folks, it was like maybe 3 or 4 people from the Superhuman side, 12 or 13 from the customer side, and we'd worked so hard, Sahil, to get this deal done. Like this was a sales cycle that was probably 12, 13, 14 months in the making. And
Wow.
at this point, we felt like a team. I mean, you've probably experienced this, right? When it takes that long to sell something, because it's the first deal of that size we'd done. And now the customer actually feels like they're on the Superhuman team. They said to us that Superhuman felt like we were on their team and that it was the best sales cycle they've ever actually been a part of. We're the best vendor they've ever worked with. And that camaraderie, when you're at that closing dinner, that's my favorite thing.
I love that. That's and what about your least favorite?
My least favorite thing is oh, it's the waiting. It's you're like, hey, it's like 5 p.m. on Friday. Will we better hear back? And then you wait and you wait and you wait, and then you get an email or the guy texts you, and it's like, so sorry, we didn't get the chance to talk about it internally this week, but I promise you we'll let you know on Monday. And then you can relax, then you can go have a weekend or whatever it is. But yeah, it's the waiting. It's tough.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are going to resonate with that for sure, my friend. And then last question for you is around the offer for the Bravado community. You'd mentioned that you'd be extending something to the community as part of this partnership. You want to talk a little bit about that and how people when they want to sign up, how they can get access to that?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a secret offer for the Bravado community. Go to superhuman.com/bravado and you'll end up in a special version of our flow where if you get Superhuman that way, you actually also get 2 months free. So we
Wow.
don't want, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't want any kind of roadblocks for people trying this. We know that we're onto something really, really special. Like I mentioned, we've had many sales teams been using Superhuman for sales over the last few months. We're finding that reps can work more deals, sales capacity has increased. We're finding that deal cycles shorten, and we just want every seller to try it at this point and to give us your feedback. I mean, we're not done building it; we're launching it probably as of when this podcast recording goes out, and we can work with you to make the best possible sales experience that you can imagine for you and your team of sellers.
Well, Rahul, thank you so much for spending the time and thank you for that super generous offer. Again, it's superhuman.com/bravado, 2 months for free. Really exciting. I will end by saying that, you're somebody who I obviously share a close friendship with, but also someone who I admire very much for your uh craftsmanship around building great products. I used Reportive back in the day, so I'm sure did many salespeople. So, we're all familiar with it, and we're familiar with what LinkedIn took it and did with it, which we're less happy about. But great, incredible product, and to have somebody who is a founder who's building a tool for salespeople that touches email, which is such a hard problem to solve, and is doing so with all these like really innovative, unique features that I'd never like even imagined that you'd be able to do is hugely exciting and is a win for salespeople everywhere. We want you to win. We want this to be an awesome product because it's going to help salespeople. And like our mission at this company is to help salespeople be more successful in their careers. And you're building a tool that can help them do that in the one place that there's been no innovation whatsoever. Your Venn diagram of like you're spending hundreds of dollars on a CRM that your salesperson hates and doesn't want to log into. You're spending hundreds of dollars on a prospecting tool that is decaying in efficacy every single week because the channels aren't working. And then you're spending $9 a month on your Gmail account. And that's actually the backbone of your entire go-to-market operation, especially post-meeting pre-close. Yeah, I mean, that makes so much sense, man. And hugely exciting. Congratulations. And excited to see this be wildly successful.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sahil. Thank you for having me. And for everyone who made it to this point, thank you for watching or listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much and take care.